It's Door County's own FM 106.9 and 93.3, The Lodge in Studio B with our favorite doctor, Dr. Heise, Door County Medical Center's Chief Medical Officer. Hello.
Hi, Jamie.
Good holiday weekend for you? I haven't, it's been a while.
Nice holiday weekend. It certainly was busy in the county, wasn't it?
It was interesting because the word on the street is really, there was a lot of people in and around the county, but we don't know where everybody went because it didn't feel as packed and the lines weren't as long at certain places and restaurants that you may generally anticipate that. So yeah. I'm guessing outdoors and maybe the beaches like in other states.
Could be, yeah.
We have a couple new things developing in and around the county too. We have new positive tests.
We do.
Because now those tests were taken, 10 to 14 days prior to the 4th of July holiday. It's not like people were here on Saturday and now we have the test results on Monday.
Yeah, no, we don't have those tests. But again, we're really fortunate that we don't have high numbers. But we went from being in the 40s to now we have the county's tally is 50, but our tally at the hospital is 53 because that counts all the positives we've had. And what that means is there's 3 tests, at least 3 out of the ones that we've tested that are not from the county, that
Sure.
their home residence is somewhere else.
Gotcha.
And that could be Kewaunee County where they just came up here because maybe they have a primary doctor that's here at Door County Medical Center and they live in Kewaunee. So it could be that. But I do know personally because I deal with a lot of these, but there have been some that are from out of state and from out of the county. I
Sure.
mean, as far as like in the Milwaukee area, things like that.
Are you seeing anything with the research that's coming through that we've heard now on the news that there may be multiple strains of COVID, which to me doesn't sound, I'm not really surprised by that. You always hear about different flu strains, and if it's within the same family of viruses, I would expect that there'd be different strains. So they're saying there's an East Coast one, the original like Washington State version, and possibly a Chicago version.
What you're referring to is kind of what happens with influenza every year. That's why we have a vaccine for influenza, but we need to look at what do they think the strains are going to look like, and that's the vaccine that's developed for that year. I think we're seeing the same thing with SARS-CoV-2, which is the virus that causes COVID. Virus mutations, that's a very common thing. And what part of the conversation has been is that maybe one of the mutations has caused it to be a little bit less severe from the perspective of, people will often quote, for those that are really trying to convince themselves that this really isn't that bad, they'll say, well, see, look at the death tolls. The death tolls, mortality rates aren't that high, which they're not, and that's terrific. But it doesn't mean that it can't be infectious. I'm jaded because of what I do for a living, but you just don't know when the virus is going to come up and be really severe and really kill you or cause significant debility. And that's the hard part, is if you could look at it and say, yeah, you know what, lots of people are going to get infected, but generally speaking, you'll do fine. We know about 80% of cases are benign. You might feel sick, weak, body aches, you might feel terrible, but it gets better and it goes away.
Sure.
But there's still a reasonable percent that can make you quite sick.
We're hearing some rumblings in the medical community, too, that the after effects or the ICU after effects are long lasting. It wasn't just, you recovered from that and out the door you go. There's been reports now that people are having a number of different symptoms, loss of memory and things of this sort for 4 or 5 months after they've been released from the hospital. Have you had that in other cases?
Well, the big one that we hear is people that lose their taste and smell. That sometimes doesn't come back.
Oh, wow,
or at least,
really?
When I say doesn't come back in the time that we know. So it's still temporary as far as we understand, but that'll be something we'll see. When it comes to people that are really, really sick, they're on mechanical ventilation or they're on some other kind of high flow oxygen, things like that. And those things in and of themselves, they can save your life on the short run, but long term, those are not benign things. Those are things that have consequences. If you're on constant high flow, high percentage oxygen, that causes problems in a myriad of ways. So yeah, I think what we'll find is as time goes on, these people that were dreadfully sick in the hospital for weeks and weeks at a time, their lungs are not ever going to work as well as they once did. Now that's supposition. We don't know that for certain yet, but that's what we're starting to see. And the medical literature is rife with that sort of thing. Is people will come up with case reports. If they're a large academic institution, they'll say, okay, we're looking at all of our 400 COVID cases.
Okay.
And we're seeing that out of those 400, 150 have so far long-lasting, in air quotes, effects months.
Sure.
And that's what's being reported. So all of this is, bear in mind, this all started, 5 months ago?
Right. Still, generally speaking, a pretty short time frame.
So I think we will be able to talk intelligently, if I can even use that word, in the next year or two. But right now, we're still so early on. And I think that's what's most frustrating for most people in the public, is that these people don't know what the heck they're talking about. So it's difficult because we just don't know, and do the best we can to try and piece this stuff together. But we learn more as the time goes on and as we see more.
Sure, it is a moving target at times, especially with the mutation. So do you feel like the development of this potential vaccine is also going to be a moving target? They had always talked about it being about 18 months out. I generally don't feel much confidence at all that we're going to have a vaccine for fall or winter.
Yeah, I have not either. I mean, the only thing I've heard that to me is a little bit encouraging is that what they're doing, unlike other vaccines in the past, because this is literally global and it's affecting every aspect of life, they're throwing money at this hand over fist. Whereas normally, if you're trying to create a vaccine for something that you'd like to be vaccinated against, but it's not crucial, there's investment dollars and all that sort of thing. Whereas now, governments are just throwing money at this. So that's the only part that I think is maybe positive. The difficulty is, what we don't understand and what we have to figure out is, will the vaccine completely make you immune, or will it be like the flu, where every year we have to come up with a new strain? Will it be an annual vaccine? How long will the vaccination actually hold out? Will it allow people to go back to normal and not wear masks and worry about how close you are to someone? Will it allow that? So I think, and aside from that, the bigger piece is, we're talking, what is it? How many, 7 billion people or something in the world? Not that everyone's going to get vaccinated, but you think about the numbers, creating this many glass vials for this many medications, this many syringes, you're talking in the billions. That's not a small number.
Right.
So how long will it be until everyone could get vaccinated? You're looking at 2022 is what I've read, for really being able to vaccinate the population at large. And these are the things that are the scariest part of it. And I think some of what we're seeing with people saying, well, I don't believe that we need to wear masks or this, I think some of this is just maybe the way of coping and saying, I can't get my head around this. And so I'm just going to move on as I normally would. And that's understandable. It really is. I think about this every once in a while, and all of a sudden your mind gets into this loop of, oh my God.
Right. It can be overwhelming.
When is this going to end, and what is this going to mean for us long term?
So we're looking at the fall semester as well. There's been more talk about how universities are trying to deal with it, and how some of our local schools are getting some feedback from parents on how we might want to put children back in the classroom. I've also heard some rumblings now that they feel like the kids, I'm using air quotes for that, might be the next group that gets targeted. And I'm saying that not from an age demographic, but because, well, we've seen in different situations where nursing homes, they were all confined, and then that population of the demographic had gotten sick. Well, now they're looking at childcare facilities and things of that sort. Do you have any comments on how folks are preparing for that, or what to expect for our kids?
Well, I know the school districts have a tough job because they've got to figure out how to logistically make this all work. I think the one thing that my opinion is, it's important that the kids get back to classrooms, because I think that's where they learn the best. I also think there's all kinds of downstream effects when people are staying home. We're seeing an increase in suicidal thoughts. This is not guess, this is for real. You don't know, the situation at homes that kids are living in aren't the best. Sometimes school is their only refuge. But I do think what's going to be key is these kids are going to have to mask. And I know there's all kinds of hue and cry about, well, how do we make kids mask, and we can't keep the kid, I think that just got to be dealt with. I mean, life is tough, and we can't just whine about it and say, well, we can't do that, it's not right. I think we're going to have to mask our kids, because I'm not so much worried about the children getting sick, because as we all know, kids early on, and when they go into the fall, they get sick with all kinds of super bugs, and they bring it home to their parents, and their parents are all thankful as they get these colds.
Right, the kids are pretty resilient, and then everybody else just, it's like dipping them in a petri dish and bringing them home.
And with COVID, what you worry about isn't, at least for me, I don't worry about the children as much as I worry about the teachers and the administrative staff. They're older, and they not old, but they're older than kids, and they are more susceptible to illness. The parents are more susceptible to illness. The grandparents are more susceptible to illness. And so that's where school districts have a responsibility in the community not to create a festering pool of infectivity that's then going to go and spread it to the community. So I think any conversation of not wearing masks would be a non-starter for me.
We're talking with Dr. Heise, Door County Medical Center's Chief Medical Officer. Our infection rate ticked up a little bit here in Door County, but we're still overall in a good range.
Yeah, we're
safe range.
Yeah, we're doing really well. I mean, the one negative is that our percent positives went from, I think it was about 1% or so, 1.5%. Now it's 2.5%. So it's heading up, and that what that helps you to sort of understand is the increased positives due to the broadening of the net, casting a wider net, or is it because people are actually more infective? And as you see percent positives go up, that's when you get concerned. If we're below 5%, that's pretty encouraging. I think in Arizona, Texas, you're seeing infection rates or positives of 15, 20%. And
Double digits, that's
difficult.
scary.
Yeah, that's difficult to manage.
Any last comments as we go into another week? We have a hot and sticky and humid weather right now. Is there any correlation or any crossover between heat exhaustion or heat stroke symptoms and some of those COVID symptoms? Because if you really get zapped with the sun, you're going to get some nausea and some headache. Has any of that come through?
Sure. I mean, that's the difficult part is there's a lot of crossover symptoms. When you say to someone, well, if you feel feverish, if you have chills, if you have body aches, if you feel tired, if you have a headache, if you maybe have some diarrhea, that could go along with a handful of things. That's where it's difficult. And that also is where, when you're going to be in an enclosed space, you're best off to wear a mask to protect yourself and to protect others. I think you're best off if, when you're outside, you don't have to wear a mask, but just stay about 6 feet apart. That's the big thing. And then wash your hands a lot. I mean, if you do those three things, everyone's heard me say it. They're sick to death of me saying it. But I really do believe those three things are going to keep us in good stead. So if we just can do those three, I know Tom Hanks was quoted as saying, in order for us to get to tomorrow, we have to do these three things. And if you can't find it within yourself to do those three things, well, then shame on you. That was Tom Hanks' quote, not mine.
Sure.
But I like the way he put it.
Right,
I think that's sort of true.
Good advice.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, do your part. Thank you so much for stopping in again. Dr. Heise, Door County Medical Center's Chief Medical Officer.
Thanks, Jamie.
It's Door County's own FM 106.9 and 93.3, The Lodge.